Let's get on with it. Good to see you. Thanks for being with us as ever this morning. Tory trust and council cuts. That's what we're going to be discussing this morning. You'll have your opinion on both of those issues, no doubt, and we want to hear them. Our programme always provokes a conversation on social media. Why don't you join in? If you want to do that, the hashtag is BBC Sunday Show. Now then, what drama on a Sunday morning. The Prime Minister sacking his own party chairman before the toast and marmalade's even on the table in number 10. You remember, Nadeem Zahawi was at the centre of a scandal involving his tax affairs. The man who was, until recently, in charge of the nation's finances, faced allegations that he had failed to pay millions of pounds of his own money into the public coffers in tax. Well, Rishi Sunak wrote to him this morning saying he had committed a serious breach of the ministerial code and he sacked him. Well, joining me now from Edinburgh is the MSP and Scottish Conservative Party Chairman Craig Hoy. Good morning, Mr Hoy. Thanks for being with us this morning. Good morning, Martin. So, Nadeem Zahawi, Party Chairman, gone in the last hour. What's your reaction?
I think that's the right decision. The Prime Minister, I think, has shown a sense of duty and integrity right throughout this process. It was only right and proper that he asked Sir Laurie Magnus, his ethics advisor, to look into this issue, and Sir Laurie has come back swiftly, concluded that Nadeem Zahawi had broken the ministerial code, and the Prime Minister has then acted decisively in removing Mr Zahawi from office. I think the Prime Minister has done the right thing.
Really? Decisively,
right,
this issue's been
right the way through.
This stink's been hanging around for months.
It hasn't been hanging around for months in the same way that it was when the main allegations were made. I think it's right and proper that the Prime Minister fully investigates all the facts. That's why we have the independent ethics advisor, and I think the fact that that report came forward swiftly from Sir Laurie and that the Prime Minister then acted decisively this morning, I think shows that the Prime Minister has both a sense of duty and a sense of integrity on these big issues, because he said that he wanted to govern with integrity, and it's quite clear that he is.
The reason, Craig, that it wasn't hanging around for months is that details would appear to have been held back from the Prime Minister. In that regard, do you have any sympathy with Nadeem Zahawi this morning?
Look, I think it is right that Nadeem Zahawi has been removed. The Prime Minister said he was not aware of those tax issues and his tax affairs at the point in time where he appointed him to his government. That, I think, accounts to a breach of the ministerial code, and I think, therefore, it is right and proper that Nadeem is leaving the government and leaving his post as party chairman. But he has significant achievements. He was vaccine minister, so I think it is important we also recognise his contribution. But it is absolutely right and proper that he leaves office today, and the Prime Minister has done exactly the right thing in my view.
Yeah, he was also Chancellor of the Exchequer and sorted all this out while he was effectively the boss of the HMRC. There is still a large whiff around this, isn't there, and the way it has been played out, and the fact actually that stuff was being withheld from the Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister didn't know enough about this a week ago.
Look, the fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister asked his ethics advisor to probe this issue. That was done swiftly, and the Prime Minister has acted decisively. I think it's right and proper that the Prime Minister assembled all the facts, not just relying upon newspaper headlines, but where there has been a clear evidence of wrongdoing and of a breach of the ministerial code, the Prime Minister has acted, and I think that shows that he is willing to stand up for that fundamental principle of integrity that he put at the heart of his government when he became our leader and Prime Minister last year.
Sacked him at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Has he fired him for the telly, do you think?
No, not at all. I think the reason it has happened is that the minute all the facts were assembled, the Prime Minister, rather than leaving it to next week, showed that he was willing to act decisively.
What, and you think all the facts were put together at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning?
I think had the report waited till Monday or Tuesday, you would be asking me on Wednesday morning, Martin, why has it taken so long?
Well, actually, I might ask you why he didn't do it last Wednesday.
Well, I think the fundamental point was that the Prime Minister asked Sir Laurie to investigate. The report that he produced, I think, is very clear. I haven't seen all 4 pages of it yet, but I heard excerpts driving here this morning, and I think on that basis, when the facts are assembled, the Prime Minister has taken a very clear decision to sack Nadeem Zahawi. I think it's showing that when tough decisions need to be made, this Prime Minister will take them, and he is acting with a sense of duty, a sense of public duty, and a sense of integrity and purpose.
Let's not forget, he's the same Prime Minister who brought Suella Braverman back into his cabinet in the same job that she'd resigned from breaching the ministerial code 6 days before. When would it be appropriate for Nadhim Zahawi to come back into frontline politics? A fortnight?
Well, I think that is obviously would be a matter for Nadhim Zahawi and the Prime Minister, but I think what we have here is clear evidence of a breach of the ministerial code, and I think on that basis
but it doesn't matter to this Conservative Party. You can breach the ministerial code, is what I'm saying, and be back as Home Secretary within a week.
Look, I think the Prime Minister is responsible for the appointments he made. I think the Home Secretary had a minor breach of the ministerial code, to which she brought that into the public domain.
It's a resignation issue.
Well, look, I think what's quite clear is that the Prime Minister today has shown he's willing to act with integrity, a sense of purpose and duty, and he was decisive. And I very much welcome that, because I think if this had rumbled on into next week, or as I said, if this had been sat on for 2 or 3 days, you would be asking other questions. I think it's perfectly right.
I've got many other questions, and let's get into a couple of them now, because if this is all about professionalism and integrity, why hasn't he done anything about his old pal and mentor Richard Sharp, the chairman of the BBC, who's at the centre of another scandal involving the previous Prime Minister and how he managed to get himself into that position within the BBC? Why hasn't he done anything about Dominic Raab, who's still cutting about Cabinet with 24 allegations of bullying hanging over him?
Look, in terms of the appointment of Richard Sharp, I've heard from both sides, and you'll have seen the same broadcasts and read the same reports, that the rigorous process of appointment and selection was followed in that respect. So I don't think there are any issues there, but again, that is open to further investigation.
Let me cut in there. Richard Sharp says he hasn't done anything wrong, but here's what we know. He applied to become chairman of the BBC. He knew Boris Johnson would make the ultimate decision as to who became chairman of the BBC. During the process of that application, he found himself at the centre of a scheme which got Boris Johnson an £800,000 loan. And then, guess what? He became chairman of the BBC. What part of that doesn't stink?
Well, look, I don't think you can imply there is cause and effect there. Richard Sharp has said that he did not provide financial advice to the Prime Minister.
But he hasn't denied he introduced the two parties. Well, he was in the middle of it.
Absolutely, and also he made sure that due process was followed in that regard, and indeed the Cabinet Secretary was fully informed. But in terms of the appointment, if you're trying to argue that there's cause and effect, it's quite clear there is a very rigorous process of selection for the chairman of the BBC, and
no better candidate than somebody who is in the middle of it, who was told by the Cabinet Secretary to step away.
Look, Martin, if you can let me speak, nobody has brought any evidence forward to say that there was any that the processes of that rigorous process of appointment was not pursued, and I think that is the important thing. It was an independent and rigorous selection process, and quite clearly the issues in relation to the side issues in relation to the Prime Minister were not relevant to this appointment, as far as I can see. But again, it will be open to scrutiny, and I'm sure both Richard Sharp, the BBC, and the government will be fully transparent as they approach this issue.
Dominic Raab, 24 allegations of bullying. Should he still be in office now, interacting with the people who are presumably the same people who accused him of inappropriate behaviour? Well,
I think, yet again, Martin, there is an investigation underway, and it's
should
only right.
Should he not be suspended pending that investigation?
It's only right and proper that we allow these investigations to take place. I remember that Tony Blair sacked Peter Mandelson over the Hinduja passport affair, and then subsequently an investigation found there was no wrongdoing. So
should he be suspended pending that investigation, given the nature of the allegations?
I think the issue here is that the Prime Minister has set up an investigation. I hope, like the situation with Nadhim Zahawi, that investigation reports quickly, and I think in the interim it is proper that the Minister continues in his post.
Nobody elected Rishi Sunak, not even your own party members. He has got problems all around, which, with the exception of this morning where he has finally taken action, he seems to be struggling to get a hold of. He's being accused by the Labour Party of not being, quote, big enough for the job. That's a pretty damaging attack line, and there's no sign he's really getting our country back on its feet. Is this not time for a general election?
No, it's not time for a general election at all, and that we fully expect the kind of usual attacks from the Labour Party, because they're worried that Rishi Sunak has come in. He's shown a sense of integrity, he's shown a sense of public duty, and they also know that as Chancellor he took the big and bold decisions that saw this country, the UK and Scotland, through the COVID pandemic, with the furlough, with business support. And I think what we've seen since Rishi Sunak came in after you quite rightly criticising the situation that we saw in the economy late last year. The markets have stabilised. There is a real effort to make sure that we get a sustainable economy in place, that we bring growth back and that we reduce inflation. And I think that the combination of Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt have shown that we can start to recover economic credibility and get our economy back on track. And that will be vital for people right around the country, including here in Scotland, who are worried about how they'll pay their bills this winter.
Your party members are worried that you're facing electoral oblivion, and a lot of them think we know that Boris Johnson actually is possibly the answer to that. There's a wing of the party that seems to be manoeuvring to bring him back. Do you think we're going to see the return of Boris Johnson? He's going to try and depose Rishi Sunak and take his old job back?
I read some of those tabloid newspapers as well, but I don't speak to members who are saying that. Rishi Sunak was here in Scotland just a matter of 2-3 weeks ago and received a very warm welcome from our members in Inverness. In Rishi Sunak, they see somebody who has got integrity, they see somebody who's got drive and a sense of purpose, and most importantly, they see somebody who can take the big decisions to get our economy back on track and to restore growth to the British economy.
Right, listen, we're going to be talking to...
Get ready for this bumpy ride.
It's going to get real aggressive.